Okay, let's see if this thing works. I don't know. We're gonna check. Um, let's see. This is the first time I'm doing this. So I want to read the book. Where's the book? Let's see. Okay, we're gonna start off with something not so esoteric, I guess. Branch off. No, go away. I can't. Stop. And then we're gonna branch off into more esoteric stuff. I can find stuff. Okay, so let's see if my fucking computer dies while I'm doing this. Now we're gonna get into the book. Okay, so the book is called Energies and Patterns in Psychological Type. This book is by John Beebe. I came across this book because of this dude named C.S. Joseph. Okay, and I don't really like that dude, but for some reason he mentioned this book in one of his crazy lectures that he be doing that be on all kinds of tangents, and so I had this tab opened in my browser for like 3 months and I never even touched it. Knowing me, you know, uh, my attention span is not too great, so I be all over the place too. So this shit, if I don't read it now, it's never gonna get read. So I decided, hey, let me try and read this on here and see, if no one else wants to read it on their own, or you're the type of person that wants to read along with somebody and don't like reading by yourself. Uh, if you don't mind my twang, because I got the New York twang about me. If you don't mind the accent, then it's just fine. Okay, let's see what's going on. Okay, so it just kind of just starts off. I don't know what this is, so I'm just gonna read it. It says this book encapsulates John Beebe's influential work. Oh, I'm gonna provide the link so that way you can take a look at it. Yeah. So this book encapsulates John Beebe's influential work on the analytical psychology of consciousness, building on C.G. Jung's theory of psychological types and on subsequent clarifications by Marie-Louise von Franz and Isabel Briggs Myers. So this is the model he's basing this on. Beebe demonstrates the bond between the 8 types of consciousness. So this is like a summary. Jung named, and yeah, the archetypal complexes that impart energy and purpose to our emotions, fantasies, and dreams. For this collection, Beebe has revised and updated his most influential and significant previously published papers and has introduced in a brand new chapter a surprising theory of type and culture. Beebe's model enables readers to take what they already know about psychological types and apply it to depth psychology. The insights contained in these 15 chapters of this book will be especially valuable for Jungian psychotherapists, post-Jungian academics and scholars, psychological type practitioners, and type enthusiasts. That'd be us, right? Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Accomplishments. Okay. Now you can read that part on your own. It's not that much. Yeah, I am not as long-winded as this dude is. The Beebe dude. Um, I saw an interview of him, and he was so long-winded. He never uh, even let the other lady say anything. It was just kind of like a whole hour of just him just talking nonstop. This dude's giving like names and dates and shit. And I'm like, boy, I don't care about none of that shit. Can you just like get to the goddamn point? I want the nuggets. I want the nuggies. I don't want the whole other shit that, that doesn't have nothing to do with the fucking nuggies. Come on. But dude has any. You know what I'm saying? I think that it's kind of reverse. I think he has SI on top. But that's just me. Uh, this dude was so fucking long winded. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna read your book because your book is probably less boring than hearing you talk. Anyway, so that was a summary. Now we're on this little page here, and it's just the title again. And then, so it's energies and patterns in psychological type, the reservoir of consciousness. Okay. Uh, yeah, all that. Um, it was published in 2017. Okay. Whatever, they're based in New York. Yeah. Uh, what are we looking at here? Okay. Illustrations. Apparently, this dude thinks he's an ENTP. Okay. You want me to read the goddamn preface, man? Uh, a psychologically minded analyst, therapist, or counselor soon discovers an interesting paradox. Although people's unconscious habits are readily visible, the consciousness of others remains strangely opaque. Okay. As my colleague Donald uh, has observed in the inner world of Trump. Okay, that's interesting. You have to look that up. Um, the self-same powers that seem so set on undermining our efforts uh, are the very reservoir from which new life, fuller integration, and true enlightenment derive. Okay, I believe that. To believe that the psyche contains the seeds of its own healing is quintessentially Jungian. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like it's folding in on itself. It's kind of like the lotus, right? Thriving in mud, the same shit. This book brings together many strands of analytical, archetypal, and self psychology, including the complex theory over which Freud and Jung sparred. That was interesting. Uh, the archetypal psychology that James Hillman developed from Jung's later work, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, image of a depth psychology is centered in a little self, continually affected by the empathy, integrity, and the personal struggles of others. The defenses of the self, as inspected by Michael Fordham, no idea who that is, se conoce en su casa, uh, and the Jungian ego self axis is conceptualized by Newman and Ending. But it is the type theory that Jung brought to maturity in 1921 that I have drawn upon most to answer for myself which self experiences these teachers are actually talking about. What is new here is the degree to which our typology both creates and helps us to discover the self and its defenses in a personal way. It is thus a contribution to the understanding of the person in the psyche. That person is urged into being by archetypes. Oh, reincarnation, huh? Including the transpersonal self, big self, that's the big S. Um, this seems to drive human individuation. Whoa, he's getting esoteric here. Uh, but the little self, the little S, self, we experience as persons has its own forms of consciousness, nestled in the care of archetypes, but capable of asserting and integrating selves independently. Yeah, the many selves, the many faces, right? Mind movies, the titles we give ourselves, the little personas we like to put on ourselves, the identities, right? Okay. It's getting esoteric now, right? Yeah. Oh, are capable of asserting and integrating themselves independently. Uh, I say this lest anyone reading, let me make sure I'm still recording. Sorry. Yeah, it's still recording. Um, I say this lest anyone reading what I have written about the archetypes in this book take the eight archetype model as an unaltering image of inevitable rigidity. It's just not supposed to be. Rather, it is the psyche's many dynamic parts that give it the flexibility over time to articulate the self, the big self, the big S, in a personal way that our adaptation to our typology makes us capable of displaying. The reader is therefore advised to approach the book with this developmental perspective in mind. It may not be amiss, as I celebrate in these pages a full 50 years of reflecting on Jungian typology. Okay, sir. To by what by uh, admit what by now must be obvious that my own perspective on the subject is continuing to develop. Whoa. So that was John Beebe in 2015. Okay, make sure I got here. The 8 function attitudes unpacked to help people apply their scores on the MBTI registered trademark to themselves and to reap the deeper transformative benefits of Jungian type theory. We need to be able to recognize the different types of consciousness. Jung originally described, practically, that means we have to be prepared to recognize in someone's interactive or introspective personality style, introverted feeling, FI, introverted thinking, TI, introverted intuition, NI, introverted sensing, SI, extroverted feeling, FE, extroverted thinking, TE, extroverted intuition, NE, or extroverted sensation, SE, simply on the basis of what the person reveals in our presence. And this has to be done non-biased, okay, to note, because a lot of people, they think they know what a function is and they really don't. They have that shit ass backwards. So okay, simply on the basis of what the person reveals in our presence. We also need to be able to assess how well the function attitude displayed is actually working for the person who is showing it to us. Consider the fresh daylight that an executive coach can potentially bring to a client when she says, "It sounds like you've done everything in your power to solve this problem using your preferred introverted intuition and extroverted thinking. I've also heard you express some introverted feeling evaluations of the situation. Have you considered calling out the reserves to see how some of the other types of consciousness might approach this quandary?" Then think how futile this intervention would be if the coach could not explain to the client what those other functions are like. Yeah. My own experience as a clinician who believes that type understanding is crucial to uncovering what limits people and what helps them develop is that very few of us, whether clients or type practitioners, can actually recognize the 8 function attitudes. To help us all meet this challenge, I will offer here some guidelines that I have developed to make the task of recognizing and identifying the different function attitudes just a little easier when we are working with clients. The first step I took towards this came about 5 years ago when a personal friend, Diane Johnson, a successful novelist who had read some of my work on types, told me it would really help if I could find words in everyday language to correspond to the different processes that Jung, with his scientific background, felt he had to specify in psychological terms. The 8 function attitudes that he describes in psychological types were for him the psychological types. This term meant something quite specific for him. The 8 types of awareness capable of constituting a psychological individual's conscious psychology. They are mental processes that, even if still in the unconscious, are likely to press for integration into the psyche, where they can become, for the first time, consciousnesses. I believe that too. Because a lot of people, when I write, people keep saying I have FETI, but I don't have FETI. Like, it's basically absent, but they seek for integration, where they can. I believe that. They hold the motivation to energize will and develop over time. As you get older, you integrate, so you kind of even out. Will and time being additional factors that can become linked to consciousness. Working with the novelist challenge, I came up with a set of 8 keywords that I thought might get the essence of the 8 function attitudes. I have been working on them ever since, testing and refining them at various conferences where I have been invited to share my latest thinking about types. Only recently have I been satisfied enough with what has emerged to commit it to publication. So here, beside each mental process whose functioning I have been trying to epitomize, I will offer the word in everyday language that I believe best gets at the heart of what that process is engaged in accomplishing. So FI, introverted feeling, would equal appraising. TI, introverted thinking, would equal defining. NI, introverted intuition, will equal knowing. I feel like these are just so very one-dimensional though. I don't like it. I don't like it. It doesn't really go deep enough. Anyway, SI, introverted sensation, is verifying. FE, extroverted feeling, is affirming. TE, extroverted thinking, is planning. See, but a lot of people think SI is planning, so it's weird. Let me see. NE, extroverted intuition, would be envisioning. That's a good one though. I think that's a good one. SE, extroverted sensation, equals experiencing, which, yeah, I could see that too. I could definitely see that. I could see taking things from real world field experience. Yeah, that's a good word. Anyway, the reader may recall that each of these words is called in grammar gerund, a verbal noun or process word. Each describes a procedure that a mind can follow over time. The procedure aimed at perceiving or judging reality as accurately as possible, which is the aim of any consciousness. When I first tried to teach these words to people, however, as pathways into what the types are, quote unquote, I realized that people could not always enter the phenomenon I was trying to get them to contemplate with just a single word on its door. Yeah, that's kind of was me with the first few words. And so, following a suggestion made by Dick Custer for introverted thinking, I decided to create a semantic field by offering 2 wing words for each word that I regarded as the heart of the process I was trying to convey. For introverted thinking, Dick had suggested other words I had mentioned in passing as synonyms for my keyword, defining. These were naming and understanding. Yeah, good. Those are good words. He drew a triangle with defining at the apex and naming and understanding at the lower corners. Good. After that, with other participants in the same Type Resources Conference in Cleveland, 2010, making suggestions, I established a similar semantic field for each of the types of consciousness that Jung had named for ease in reading them here. I will not present them as triangles, but as words across a page. The presentation on this page also reflects some adjustments in the order of words for each process, going across that I have made in recent years. SE, engaging, experiencing, and enjoying. SI, implementing, verifying, accounting, better. NE, entertaining, envisioning, enabling. NI, imagining, knowing, divining. TE, regulating, planning, enforcing. TI, naming, defining, understanding. FE, validating, affirming, relating. FI, judging, appraising, establishing the value. Okay. I found immediately that when I provided at least 3 words, listeners could begin to grasp what each of the mental processes was about and could start to recognize it in themselves and others. I realized later that what had unconsciously emerged in such a particularly creative moment, involving at least as much my anima as my more preferred functions, was a deepening that each mental process follows as its potential is increasingly realized. The first of the 3 words, as we read across for each of the 8 mental processes, can be thought of as what the process looks like on the surface. To another person seeing someone for the first time using that process, we might call its persona level. The second central word captures the heart of the process, the one that is embraced by the ego as its chief concern. The third word embodies what the process becomes at its most evolved level when it is working in sympathetic harmony with what Jung calls the self, the big self. One might call this the goal of the process. Thus, introverted feeling, FI, can develop from an initial, near instinctual judging into a mature, reflective appraising, before evolving to a more far-seeing establishing the value. In this latter stage, which aspires to wisdom, the feeling reaction finds its ground in a more ideal archetypal realm, which allows it to discriminate the value that has led to the earlier judgments and appraisals. That makes sense. Even as this sequence of 3 terms can describe a progressive maturation of the insight involved in making a particular feeling judgment into an appraisal and then a value, it also illustrates the fact that there is a temporal process within consciousness which we can actually see unfolding in real time when we are privy to the operation of any type of consciousness. I can certainly say that in my own case, my extroverted intuition often begins its action as a mental process with a stage of entertaining that applies in 2 senses of the word. He's typed backwards, by the way, so yeah, he's looking at his demonic functions, but anyway. 1, interesting and amusing myself and others, and 2, beginning to consider or entertain possibilities that I may want to go on to envision in greater detail. As soon as, through a process of envisioning, I am firmly committed to advancing possibilities that I have formerly simply entertained myself with, I find that I become quite naturally interested in enabling others to see the profit from these same possibilities. My extroverted intuition in this 3rd stage is subtly informed by its communication with the inferior function of introverted sensing. That would be heroic. Lending my intuition a more grounded, effective quality. We tend to see things through a mirror, okay? So we tend to see the lower functions and we don't see the higher functions. So he's explaining it backwards. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of the whole irony of this shit. My whole career around the theory of psychological types, which I entertained in my mind as centrally important as early as 1968, and the possibilities of which I envisioned in a way that led to the model I produced based on a set of thought experiments that began in 1973. Yeah, he's just naming dates and names, and it's just like really tiring right now. I don't really care for this shit. I don't care about your fucking timeline. Anyway, has led to my enabling audiences and readers to benefit from better understanding type. He did this same shit during the interview too, and I was just freaking tired. Like, this dude could make me fall asleep. Anyway, we don't care. Anyway, at least I don't. People like me don't. Anyway, we just want the bullet points. Alright? The system of keywords and wing words. Y'all need to be quiet, I'm recording. Wing words has helped me to understand better, especially in regard to the functions of consciousness that are normally in shadow for me. This is all just anecdotal anyway, and thus have been difficult for me to empathize with. One such of consciousness is extroverted sensing. Patients in my analytic practice for whom that function is dominant, probably me, often cannot follow my rather abstract introverted thinking. Yeah, this is the litmus test for that, dude. Yeah. It is just too disembodied to be tangible to them. It's just rather fucking tiring, to be honest. Alright. Yeah, sorry, I had to cut that off because my kids were just bugging the hell out. Well, the extroverted sensing type, I realized, works quite differently. First by engaging, then by experiencing, and finally, if it can get there, by enjoying what it has engaged and experienced. Although the root word I can actually relate to that. I used to do that with jewelry, right? You know, so you do the thing, all right? Then you see the final freaking product and you're able to take it in, right? And then it actually brings you happiness. That's the simplest way I can freaking put it. Anyway, although the root word of function, as James Hillman noted, is the Sanskrit, I'm gonna butcher this shit, bunch, I guess, which means to enjoy. I think it is fair to say, it sounds like bungee jumping. Anyway, I think it's fair to say that few truly enjoy the kind of understanding introverted thinking loves to savor. Yeah, marinate yourself. Rather, enjoying is something people with developed extroverted sensing can only get to if they engage with something and experience it for themselves. Having a sort of hands-on encounter with it that they will either enjoy or not. Yeah. From both an intellectual, scientific, and a spiritual, religious angle, enjoyment seems like a subjective, selfish goal, a form of entertainment that should not be confused with the responsibilities of consciousness. I don't get it, but yeah. But working with people whose dominant or auxiliary function is extroverted sensing, I have often noticed that only if they have enjoyed something sufficiently by bringing it near to themselves in an embodied way and have found it, when truly touched, to be a source of concrete satisfaction, does it seem sufficiently real to them to say that they have become aware of what it consists of. And it's also a spiritual element to it too, because you can actually merge with the physical thing. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of weird to describe, but you, by experiencing all things, you can kind of merge with all things because you know it inside out. This enjoyment has a hint of the spiritual to it, suggesting that the extroverted sensing function is in communion with its introverted intuition opposite. What did I fucking just say? As a consciousness, therefore, man, this dude's hella smart because he can explain that with not having those as his forefront. That was pretty insightful. As a consciousness, therefore, extroverted sensing in its stages of engaging, experiencing, and enjoying the reality of something is the difference between talking about it and getting to know it intimately. It involves touching and being touched by every part of it. A very different thing from a simply mental representation. So you're actually doing the thing, so you know the thing. Okay, you're not just talking out your ass about it. You know, this is the gripe I've had with my parents too, because they would talk about something, you know, and they just expect me to just know it. And I'm like, fuck you, I'm gonna go do that thing anyway because I cannot believe your experience. I have to experience it, you know, so that I know how it feels directly. Anyway, in this way, I have learned that the various types are actually exactly as Jung thought. The psychological stances that permit consciousness of all the phenomena we describe as psychological. That our psychology, which inevitably has a goal, aims at all of these activities, establishing the value, understanding, divining, accounting, relating, enforcing, enabling, and enjoying, will perhaps be the clearest to people through analytical psychotherapy have been witness to the individuation process. A working analyst like myself sees that in psychotherapy, our different consciousnesses do emerge and grow toward their particular goals. This is the deepest self-level of the drive to become conscious. But even a novice to psychology can quickly recognize that most people start by judging, naming, imagining, implementing internal methods by which they have already learned to deal with what they encounter, and validating, regulating, entertaining, and engaging methods by which they enact a genuine encounter with the other. I would advise people, whether veterans or novices at typology, who are still trying to learn what the types are actually doing, to focus on the central words in my horizontal sequences for the different functions of consciousness, using the wing words as the beginning and the end of the process whose functioning they're trying to become conscious of. Using this method of observation, it will become clearer the degree to which some people are centrally engaged in appraising, defining, knowing, or verifying as the internal process by which they hope to master the objects they encounter. Other people are more occupied with affirming, planning, envisioning, or experiencing as their way of expressing their willingness to subject themselves to the influence of the objects with which they are trying to connect. Seeing this fundamental difference between the introverted and extroverted functions, we can gradually come to understand not just the ways the functions differ in their introverted and extroverted aspects, but what the different purposes are that make them functions. At that point, we may be more able to understand what Jung, with his reliable introverted intuition, imagined, assuming he was that type, knew and divined that the recognition of the different types of consciousness could permit, provided we also join him in verifying the uncanny accuracy of the categories of consciousness as to how the individuating psyche actually functions on its trajectory towards consciousness. Okay? So that was the end of chapter 1. I'm going to put this link so that you could read it yourself uninterrupted, and you don't have to hear my commentary.